Amelia, and welcome back to the ALPFA Amplified podcast. This is your host, Selva Garcia. And for those who don't know what ALPFA stands for, it's the Association for Latino Professionals for America. And that is where we empower and cater to Latinx leaders who are inside the corporate world and outside of the corporate world. And we have two special guests today. We're going to talk about their stories, their successes, their challenges, and any advice for you guys watching today. Please welcome Damien Rivera and Alexander Ramirez. Yay! So I want to talk more about your story, your upbringing, what got you to where you are now.
I love talking about the beginning. For me, I started thinking about Harlem, where I grew up. So I was a kid with the holes in shoes, didn't have a pair of jeans until I was 13, living in the projects in the 80s in Harlem, right? So it's a little bit different than what it is today. Back then, there was a lot of negativity on TV around what was happening in the community and who we were. The example I like telling folks is, I remember being on the floor watching TV at my grandma's house, and she comes over and points and yells at me. She's like, "Get eso!" And like I'm laying on the floor. I'm like freaked. I'm like, what is it? I'm like, what is it? And then she starts laughing. She goes, she's like, I thought it was a vial of crack. There was so much negative about our community on TV. Wow. It actually went into the minds of our community a lot of who we were versus what we were and who we really are. So that was a lot of what was seen out there, but what I saw was something different. I saw a community around me that believed in me, believed in my ability to do things, the impossible things, right? There was a computer day camp that was set up to be able to help us learn how to code. And if you think about it today, I was coding at 10 years old in the 80s. Nowadays, I'm probably a late bloomer if I'm coding at 10 years old, right? Back then, nobody was doing it, but in our community, they put that in front of folks that looked like us. I went on a trip in high school to see a bunch of different colleges, and I went to this place where when I got there, I was looking around, and I was like, my gosh, this is where I want to go. This is where I want to be. And that was Rutgers. And so even early on in high school, I knew that was the place that I wanted to go to. And so I'm not sure if you want me to go all the way through to, kind of growing up or
Definitely, all of it.
Okay.
You want to hear
All
all
right.
of it.
So are you rah-rah first?
Are you rah-rah? Red team upstream.
Yeah.
Like I even wore a red tie for Rutgers today.
We love that.
So was able to go to Rutgers, but before that, there was a point where, and I'm realizing some of these stories are sad stories, but they were impactful stories in my life and my journey. At my grandfather's funeral, my dad points out a guy. He's like, "Do you know who that guy is?" I'm like, "No, Dad, I don't know who he is." He's like, "You know what he does?" And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know who he is. I should have known what he does, right? But he's like, and you don't say that to your dad, though. So I'm like, "No, Dad, I don't know what he does." He goes, "He's an engineer. The city buildings have to get his signature before they open up," which is not completely accurate, but accurate enough for me. He was like, "So that's what you want to be? You want to be an engineer?" I was like, "Okay, Dad, I want to be an engineer." So applied to Rutgers, got into the engineering program. I was excited about it. Wanted to do a dual degree program upon graduation it was microbiology, DNA technology in combination with an MBA. And I wanted to go, I wanted to go to NYU for my MBA. I remember visiting and they told me, "You're not gonna get in." I was like, okay. They're like, "You just need to work for a couple of years first. Before you get your MBA, you wanna work for a couple of years." I was like, okay, that sounds good. So what should I be doing? What we'll learn about business, this and that, fantastic. So then I had the opportunity to join Anderson Consulting back then, now Accenture. And I planned to be there for 2 years and then go get my MBA. 2 years turned to 21 years. Initially it was, okay, I'm an analyst, and then maybe I could get to consultant. At consultant, I was like, well, this executive manager level ain't too far away. So I was like, okay, so I could get there. And at that point, I was like, you know what, maybe I could get to this partner place. And so then I set my sights on that. Along the way, I was lucky enough to get married to the love of my life, who I met freshman year of high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've known my wife since I was 13 years old. In a few weeks, we will be married for 24 years.
Congratulations.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
congrats.
Thank you. 2 kids, 23-year-old son studying architecture, he's Damien Jr., daughter Ilana studying photography and business, and a dog that we adopted from Puerto Rico many years later. So that's our little family. My wife, Idanis, it's been an amazing journey over this time. So got married, had kids, and was kind of just going through life. And in my head, I was like, okay, I know exactly what I want to do. So I made it to that partner level, managing director at Accenture, and then I was like, okay, next I want to get a region. After a region, I want to get the country, and then after the country, Julie Sweet, watch out, I'm going to be the CEO one day. Right? Like that's what I was thinking. And they often talk about the things in life that we prepare for aren't always the things that shape a big part of our life sometimes. 2014, I was at a client site, about to go into a meeting with the SVP over there. I go into the elevator. The elevator had those TVs that you can see stuff, right? And so I see that there's a building that's collapsed, and it's in New York. And I'm like, that looks really familiar. And so I start doing a search on my phone, and my phone's just cycling. I get out, it's still cycling. I'm like, well, let me just go to my meeting. When I come out, I had finished cycling, and it's saying it's in Harlem. And so I called my mom as soon as I got out, and before I can even get the words out, she told me it was the church. So the church that we went to growing up, the church where my parents got married, had a gas explosion. Had a family member who should have been at work, normally would have been at work that day. That day she was not at work and she passed away. Another family member who normally was at church first thing in the morning, last thing at night. That day decided to go see her mom, my grandma, and she lived. And it started me on this journey of why am I here? Why am I on this planet? And it was interesting. On the train ride home, I remember talking to my dad and saying, well, what do you think that you're going to be able to do? And I said, I don't know, but I need to do something. And what hurt me I shouldn't say hurt me the most, but one of the things that hurt me a lot in that moment was I felt I didn't know how to help my community in a real way. All this learning, all this training, all these things that I had been doing as part of my role in Accenture, the Hispanic American ERG, I was the North America partner sponsor for that. I was doing all these things, but I didn't know how to help in my community in an extremely meaningful way in that moment that it needed it most. And it started me on this journey of like, oh, what am I supposed to be doing? Went to do a program called Coro Leadership New York. Coro combines nonprofit, for-profit, and government into these cohorts of solve societal problems. And it was this sort of epiphany to me of my years at Accenture to that point were a training for a more meaningful, impactful way to live my life going forward. Went to my first ever ALPFA event after that. And it was because, I actually had gone back to school to get my MBA. I was doing life check off life box stuff, right? And so I didn't need it for work. I was already a partner. I didn't need it, but I needed it for me. So I didn't really have time, right? So I was like, look, I got classwork, I got client work, I got family stuff. I don't have time for this, but they asked me to go to it was Lehman College at their student boot camp. So can you come and talk about internships? And I think it was resume writing. So I was like, sure, I'll go 30 minutes, I'm gonna do my session, I'm gonna be out of there. That 30 minutes turned to about 3 hours. I kid you not. Like, and at the end of it, it was a table similar to like this, except maybe a little bit more circular. And there was probably about 20 of us at the end of the night. It was students, what you would consider maybe your typical students, 18, 19, 20-year-olds in college. They were your atypical students that were in their 30s, had gone back to school with kids of their own, early career professionals, late career professionals, all giving insightful information, advice, guidance. It wasn't just professionals to students, it was students also to professionals, right? And it was this really amazing moment. And I remember when I left that, because the CEO of ALPFA at that time had asked me to consider being more engaged. And I remember at that point, I thought, if this is what the organization's about, I have to be a part of it. And so then it started my journey as CEO, which I will stop and see if there's more questions about that. I'm happy to answer those.
Yeah, I would love to see like what you do like as a CEO, because I feel like a lot of people, you know, say, oh, you're a CEO, but what do you do like in day-to-day life? Do you have a job, or like, is that your full-time job?
Yeah, this is what I do. This is what I do for a living. My wife and I are blessed enough, privileged enough to be able to do this work for a living. It was interesting. It was a hard decision, but also one of the easiest decisions. To be able to be in a position to create an impactful and change happening on a daily basis is amazing. What I say is, God willing, I live a long, long time, right? Already have kids, grandkids. I already have kids, maybe one day grandkids, not too soon. You're not, right, like down the road, maybe great grandkids one day. I want to be able to say, when I had a chance to be able to jump in and do something meaningful, I did my part. And with both feet, jumped right in. Day-to-day life of me in the CEO position, one of the most important things is time, right? How do you spend your time? Because there are a lot of demands on your time. So one of the biggest pieces is, and I say this all the time to folks, I am no more busy than anybody else here. Anybody else here, anybody else listening, I am no more busy or less busy. We all just have different types of busy, right? Yeah. And the question becomes, how are you going to be impactful and meaningful with how you spend your time in those hours of the day? Because all of us have the same time of the day. And so for me, I've been trying to do, I say trying because I'm not great at it yet, but trying, I'm not sure if y'all have read the 5 a.m. Club. So the whole 5 a.m. club thing, right? So 20 minutes, when you first wake up, so you have to get up at really about 4:45 a.m. After you get ready, first 20 minutes, it's exercise, then meditation, then journaling or learning something new. There's sort of different pieces there. Then you have focus work. Then you fill in the rest of the day with other meetings and things like that. And so for me, it's really making sure I'm allocating my time the right way to be able to create the change and build out the infrastructure that we're trying to do as an organization. We have a goal of 10xing Alpha by the end of 2030. So going from 100,000 members to 1 million, right? Like that is, we will absolutely get there, and we need to get there. One of the reasons why we need to get there is the single largest age demographic in the Latino community in this country is 10 to 19 year olds. Well, what's going to be happening over the next 7 years? They will be entering, going through, starting their careers, and getting through that first point of executive, which typically happens in the first 5 to 7 years. So what that means is, right now, 4% Latino executives across the country. Well, if we do our part the right way and provide that network, that access to information to be able to learn how you progress along the way, we can literally create enough change where that 4% gets to that 20%. And so we feel it's a responsibility of the organization to be able to put ourselves in the position to make that change happen. And so that's what we are focused on right now. So my time is spent on what are going to be the most important things that we could do every single day that make that change. And this here is one of those things, right? I've seen what y'all do as part of the podcast. I think it's awesome. I will tell you this, I kid you not. I actually was feeling a little bit emotional as I was sitting here. I'm like, it is a full circle moment for me in this place, right? The same school I went to is now having me have the opportunity to share some of my story. And frankly, y'all are so sharp on what you do. It's making me feel like I gotta elevate my game to be able to sit in here this room with y'all, right? Like, so this is important because it's gonna get messaging out there to everybody to help understand additional stories, right? All of our stories.
Definitely, that is our goal.
I think I resonate with him a lot on the fact that why you're doing this, right? So you are a leader on Alpha National, and that inspired me to go and be like, okay, I'm gonna be president of Alpha Workers Teamwork. Because like I just saw when I first came to Rutgers and I was a freshman, I tell this story all the time, but I was literally spending my freshman year in the gaming club. I love games. So I was just spending nothing against the gaming and anything, but it's just like my mom yelled at me and said like, tienes que estar con tu vida. Te mando a la escuela a estudiar. No after that. So honestly, like to the day, Mom, shout out to you. Definitely going to Alpha. I had a friend that was on Alpha. I went just for funsies. When I went there, I met such an amazing culture of people. Like with my same Hispanic background, I come from El Salvador, so born and raised there. I was looking for that here. And then literally just listening to you saying like all your story and everything kind of like resonated with me in the sense that we all have a why, and I feel like we sometimes don't have that space to say that why. Like, you know, like honestly, our voices are being so diminished as Hispanics here in the U.S. that I'm so happy that ALPFA is helping like speak it out loud, as well as other many other people in the nation, and just hearing how many things you do in your day. And I thought I'm the one that's wrong with time managing. Like looking at our calendars, like I see her calendar, I see my calendar, I probably imagine your calendar. Just seeing every hour, every minute, it's counted. It's just amazing because then again you go and be like, who am I impacting? Like what am I doing? And I feel like people ask me like, if you're struggling so much of being president, why did you do it in the first place? And I'm like, I just like seeing people happy, seeing have the opportunities, going to their dream jobs, or not even knowing they had a dream job. Like just seeing that, it's just amazing. And just seeing that the people that were before me inspired me to do it, and I can do the same.
Yeah.
So I definitely resonate that on that end.
I do resonate with that as well because I don't get to talk more. I just get to, you know, ask questions. But I started off in high school. It was like helping undocumented students get into college, and that was so life-changing for me because I was able to see and give other people the success, and that was my definition of success. I knew my definition of success, seeing other people succeed and their faces and their parents' faces saying, my child can go to college. That is amazing. And so here, I wanted to make an impact as well, and I found out that through my position that I can make an impact, and I said, if I don't have that intrinsic motivation, I always say this, if I don't have that intrinsic motivation or passion for, you know, the mission of ALPFA, then I'm not gonna do anything. I'm gonna just stay stagnant. I'm just gonna do it for the title. But right here and right now, I'm doing it because I know that some people watching, maybe they're afraid of being and making that step into their career journey. And from home, from the comfort of their home, can say, maybe I can do it. And that is why I do this today, and I'll do it forever because I love giving back. I love seeing students succeed. I mean, I love my role. I didn't know I could be so good at it, and it led me to, you know, my career that it is now, and I literally could not have it any other way. So I really resonate with that.
No, I love that. And I'll say this too, right? Like, because y'all use the word impact multiple times. I think, like, it's developing an impact plan for yourself for a year. Like, one of the things I wanted to make sure I threw out there is, you asked me sort of the spending time. In addition to the day-to-day kind of work, it's what impact do you want to make over the course of this year? And there's multiple parts to that, but defining that for yourself in such a way that you don't get thrown off course with all the stuff happening in the world, right? Because there's a lot to do in this world that allows you to be able to make the impact that you're focused on while you are still going about your day-to-day journey. And it's something that I would highly suggest folks think about is like, what's the impact plan that they have for themselves over a given year? Because it helps you really escalate your ability to inspire the world. Because I love how you put, like, everybody has a story that will inspire somebody else that will create a change, right? It's awesome. And that's what, like, I'm telling you, I've wanted to do a podcast for so long. Like, I just, like, we're just having a conversation, right? So, like, seriously. And so I'm learning so much, even just through this process over here of how do you create a channel, access to information that can scale out to literally millions of people can hear this if they want to, right? And that is what I think I love about what y'all are doing. You're creating this access to information for so many folks that really is going to allow for anybody across the country, across the world, to be able to continue their elevation and things. So it's awesome. I just think it's interesting.
No, I love that. Yeah, that's why we're doing it. That's why I thought it would be a great idea just to connect people.
Yeah.
Even if you're not from ALPFA representative or, you know, anywhere like near us, you could still connect with us regardless and still feel like, oh, like I could do this regardless. Like, you don't know where you are in the position and what career you are right now, you can still do it.
Yeah.
And so that's why,
I think going back to your point of mentioning that sometimes you plan that impact. If I'm being honest, I didn't plan my impact at all. Like sometimes it just happens. Like I'm being honest, like the first time I had a mentee, I didn't realize, oh, I'm mentoring this person. I was just giving advice because somebody gave me advice.
Yeah.
So when you said like you plan it, I guess right now I could plan my impact, but before I didn't even notice I was impacting people. I think that's a good part of this podcast too. You don't even know what you're saying, maybe resonating with somebody else.
Yeah.
You don't even know that you're impacting anybody else. So definitely, I just think that it's nice to just feel like, oh, I helped somebody without even realizing.
Yeah.
That's like something that ALPFA did for me too.
And even if it's one person, I
Yeah.
think that goes such a long way. Just impacting one person that can impact somebody else and impact millions from there. It's like a domino effect.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to know more about your hobbies. Like, what do you do outside of Alpha? Like, who you are. Like, tell me all.
I just did the Puerto Rico Ironman 70.3 a few weeks ago.
What is that?
So you swim 1.25 miles, then you bike 56, and then you run a half marathon.
Oh wow.
And so it was awesome.
That's a lot to do. Wait, that's a lot to just say out of nowhere.
So good, like it was. And so what was cool was, so I was ready. My wife made this shirt for me, so it had Alpha, and on the back it was like Dale Alpha Media, and it had Puerto Rico in the back. I'm Puerto Rican. I'm New Yorker, right? I was born in New York.
Yeah.
So much fun. I loved it. One of the cool things was, as I was out there running, people that knew of Alpha were like, sort of go Alpha, and I didn't expect it over there.
Wow.
And then the folks from the UCF chapter, the students that were on spring break, a couple of them were just doing the triathlon because it's fun, I guess. And they were there also, and so it was cool to see just various folks from the Alpha community. But triathlons is something I've been doing for probably close to maybe 15 years now.
Wow.
I started because I actually had a pain on my side. And I went to the doctor. I was concerned about what it was. Luckily, I brought my laptop bag with me, and as I was going to leave, he was like, okay, we'll run all these tests. As I was going to leave, I go to pick up my laptop bag. He was like, got
There
your
you
problem.
go.
It's the laptop bag is causing you issues. It's going to mess your neck, your spine, so that's what's causing the pain in the side. It's like, just get a roller bag, you're good. What it made me think of is, I have a family, I'm traveling a lot, I'm eating horribly, on the road food, I'm not doing any exercise, I'm not taking care of myself the way I should. And God forbid something happens because I'm not doing that. And it made me start looking for something to do to get better mental health, physical health, right? Because I say the mental health, when I go for runs, or really runs, I find myself thinking so clearly. And so having all those pieces, so that would be my big hobby. But that made me go into triathlons. Thank God nothing was wrong, but I've been doing it ever since, and I love doing them.
Oh, that's fun.
That's amazing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, I didn't expect that, honestly. I thought I was gonna be like, oh yeah, just watching this movie or something.
Yeah.
Well, we can talk about, so I also like some, like so what they call it, trashy TV. I don't like say that, but like,
Oh,
so like
okay.
Love is Blind.
Yes.
Interesting.
Such a. How do you like the fourth season?
Was that the most recent one?
The most recent one.
Oh, that's not good.
There was a lot of drama in it, like more than usual.
Gosh, I think it's just getting worse and worse because people are noticing
Knowing-
like what they
right.
like Love is Blind is.
Exactly. I would say exactly. Like the question then becomes like, are they doing it just to
Right.
get onto the next show? Right. Like there's a
Get
couple of
the
them that are
fame.
now going to be on Perfect Match, I think, from
Is it
Love is
really?
Blind.
Yeah, I actually don't know.
It's a
I just
reality
heard
show.
about it.
Yeah, I
never
love
watched
it. Yeah, it's the first season, like it was alright. The second season was great. Like the people that came out of it and they're actually married and have kids now,
Yes.
it's like, whoa, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
But then now, like people are just doing it for fame, so it's, like,
Yeah.
it's ruined. Like
It's-
it's
yeah.
like it's, and the lawsuits are crazy.
It's those-
Lawsuits?
There was yeah.
Yeah,
So like
lawsuits.
there was one couple, I think it was on season 3, that could not be shown because of like issues and stuff like that.
Yeah, like they have to cut off all their scenes.
Maybe I put it in my Netflix.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix.
It is
yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah.
I think you should watch it. It's fine.
So like
It's fine.
I sometimes just need those things that it's just like I don't
Yeah.
want to think. I don't want to think
Just
right
need to
now.
laugh.
I just don't want to think. I just want to laugh. I just want
Yeah.
to just sit back, and sometimes you just need that. Like so, my wife and I will throw on something like that. That's
Yeah, that's fun.
just
Yeah. Is there any books that you read that you recommend?
So you should see my office background. Like
Ooh.
I read a lot. I'll say the ones that I always recommend to folks, if you haven't read it, by Carol DeWitt, Mindset by Carol DeWitt, and Presence by Amy Cuddy. 2 phenomenal books that they should frankly teach in high school, and actually they should teach in middle school, high school, college, and the first 5 years of being a professional. They should have
Wow.
different levels of that. They are phenomenal books that help you understand. I'll give you a small example. Presence.
Yeah.
You ever heard of power posing? Right, like power posing, like
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah.
you
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of do this Superman pose, or like
Oh,
right before you go into a meeting, right? Like all this sort of stuff. Like
Yeah.
it helps you feel good, and then you go out there and you give your presentation, and you knock it out the park, right? Presence actually goes into some of the psychology and the physiology behind that. Right, so what is actually happening in your body when you are positioning yourself a certain way? What do you do, and how does that impact your brain? How does that impact then how you go and present? It goes into that science to also hit us, so that the art and science behind these things. Phenomenal book, Mindset. I think one of the biggest, a lot of people are afraid of AI and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
AI ain't gonna take over the world, right? Like it actually reminds me a lot of the internet.
Yeah.
When the
when
internet
it first came
started.
out?
Yeah, like it really does. And the reality is, those that have the mindset of, okay, I'm gonna be able to go with this and do things at a whole nother level, leverage it almost as an extra arm and a leg for myself, are gonna do amazing things. And Mindset, really, that book helps you think about those pieces. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking too much.
No, you're not. We're listening to you.
I was like, yeah, please go.
Yeah, no, I'm like, I'm just immersed into it.
Um,
That's so cool though. You actually did draft. I think that's something that I want to do eventually.
What's that one?
Like the
Traffic.
five. Yeah.
So depending on the discipline, you can pick different ones because they're like different ones. Like if you're a bad swimmer or that's your weakest discipline, the New York City one actually is fantastic. So it's an Olympic distance.
Mm-hmm.
You swim just under a mile, you bike 26 miles, and you run a 10K. The swim is in the Hudson River, so it's a little bit
Wow.
but the current goes so fast. You could float if you want and finish that in about 25 minutes or 20 minutes even. The first year I did it, I swam so horribly that a bag of potato chips they threw in the water finished the swim before I did.
Oh wow.
And I kid you not. So I'm gonna tie this back to Alpha.
Potato
Jack, you might want to put this in.
Watch, Jack, throw this in. So I kid you not. It was like maybe my second or third meeting as CEO of Alpha. I'm at an event in Detroit, and they had a para triathlete speaking, inspirational speaker. It's phenomenal. So we're talking beforehand. I was like, I do triathlons too.
Yeah.
He's like, it's fantastic. And we're talking. I was like, yeah, I did. I was like, I tell you, the New York one though. It's like the first year I did it, I wasn't too good at the swim. I was like a bag of chips went faster than me. He was like, that was you?
No.
I was like, wait. I was like, what? He was like, we saw you. We were yelling at you, just float, and you were trying to swim. You should have just floated. I was like, my gosh. So at an Alpha event, there was a para-triathlete who saw me struggling and remembered how horrible I was.
I was gonna say, like, you're low-key famous, you know, so like, how does that like, you know, like, I don't know, I feel like I would be more nervous if people know that I am, and I'm just like, you know.
No, like, it's interesting. I will say it is humbling. Going places sometimes where I will see people, or people will say, like, are you Damien? And we just start talking about stuff. There's good and bad in it, I guess. I think actually, nope, can't think of much bad in it. There's good in it. The fun of it is just being able to talk to folks about stuff, right? Learning life lessons from individuals, just almost going everywhere and feeling like you're gonna know someone. And that's part of just what Alpha's about, right? You can almost go anywhere and you'll know somebody. And so it is for me, probably the hard part is I'm naturally extremely shy. A lot of folks don't believe that. So I asked my wife out in high school, senior year. So you would think I would have a level of confidence. I was co-captain of the football team, captain of the baseball team. I was dean's list. You would think confidence level high. I asked her out by throwing a letter at her as I ran by and didn't even stop. I just threw a letter and kept running.
That's romantic though.
It worked at the end of the day,
It
right?
worked, well, how many years after?
Right, yeah. So I called her up that night. I'll even tell you a story. So I called her up that night. So first was Blossom. Blossom was on. I was like, okay, I'll call after Blossom because maybe she's watching Blossom. And then the Fresh Prince was on. So I was like, okay, after Fresh Prince. At that point, it was 9 o'clock. And I was like, well, if it's 9 o'clock, I can't call any later because then her dad's going to be like, don't get upset. So I called and I asked her out. She said no. And so then, but eventually she said yes, and it's worked out from there.
I would love to know if there was one piece of advice you would tell your younger self, that boy in Harlem. What would that piece of advice be?
Yeah. Be more intentional with decisions. Be okay with taking risks. I think one of the challenges, I'll say I was very lucky early in my career that I had phenomenal mentors and sponsors around me that were helping guide me along, not realizing that they were putting me in position to succeed. I was not intentional with what roles I was taking. I was not intentional with what projects or I wasn't early on. But I had amazing people who put me in position. And one time where I was, it was to allow me to be close to home because my wife was pregnant. And it wasn't the right role for me long term. And one of my longtime sponsors knew that. And he was like, I don't think it's the right spot, but I'll support you on this. He kept in contact with me. I kept in contact with him. And I remember when my son was born, gave him a call to tell him about it. He was like, well, how are you doing? And I was like, and first it's the normal, how you doing? Fantastic. How are you really doing? Not great.
Yeah.
Not liking what I'm doing. It was like, hold on a second. Clicked over the phone, called up his project manager on the project. This was a partner, so called the project manager, clicked back. He's like, be at this project on Monday. It was about 20 minutes away from where I was living. My point of all that is this. Know how to take risks, know how to be intentional, know how to keep relationships and a two-way street, right? You have as much to give someone who is 20 years further in their career as that person has to give you. If you are keeping yourself right mindset, always learning, always understanding where things are going, because you're gonna have a perspective that person will never be able to have. You will be able to see things that that person cannot see anymore, not because they don't want to, but because they're not in the position to be able to. And so being that person that has the right mindset, being the person that takes those risks, puts yourself in a position to be able to be intentional about what you want to get done, will create a significant difference in your trajectory over not just your life from a career, but from a personal side too. So that's one of the biggest things there. I know that's a few different pieces, but they all kind of come together.
And for a student's point of view, where should they start? What advice would you give them? Where should they start in their career journey to like basically skyrocket it?
I just want to add on to that, like, like that as a student, like, you would think that if you have a mentor that's higher up, you don't have anything to give them. And it's a very common theme, so I guess just falling onto that theme, like, where do you start? And as a student who thinks like, oh, I don't bring anything to the table, but my degree, probably, like, what is there for me to give to this company or this people? So
I'm going to hit on that one and circle around to that one.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. One of the things that is, that you talk about the CEO and spending time, right? What is of focus for me? Number one, people, right? Number two, the culture. And then number three are the numbers, right? What you hit on there and what an individual, regardless of what your level is, gives is insight into people and culture to that senior executive. Are my messages making their way to everyone? What is this conversation that we're having? You are able to give insights that others will not, right? And so knowing that, right? Having the confidence to know any room you walk into, you are going to add a ton of value. And please don't let me forget to circle back around on my own personal imposter syndrome or anti-imposter syndrome toolkit for us to talk about that a bit, because it plays into the whole thing of, hey, do I have something to give this person right on the other side of the table? Trajectory change, the biggest thing is the mindset. The biggest thing is the ongoing learning component and being what I will call being active, taking action, right? So the mindset piece ties into the action. So if we had to put into a single word, call it action. Individuals often will learn about things, right? What are you doing with it? Right? What steps are you taking? And this is where the risk part ties into it, because a lot of times it's like, wait a second, do I want to take that risk in this place? No, yeah, you do. Take a calculated risk, right? Take a calculated risk, but take that risk. If you don't, the likelihood of your progress is going to be stunted. Financial performance, oftentimes what are you paying for? You're paying for the additional risk.
Yeah.
Right? And so someone who is saying, I'm not going to take a risk, I'm just going to kind of keep it even keel over here and do nothing more, it's going to be a lot harder. You are not controlling what you can control. I'm a big believer in control what you can control, influence what you cannot control. And for everything else, keep a valuation of it to determine when will those pieces change into something that you can control or that you can influence. But don't assume you will never have an opportunity to do something with it. Right? You keep an evaluation of that. So the trajectory piece is taking action on things, right? You got a long career ahead. It's okay to trip and fall and mess up, get back up, have your plan in place. I know some people don't like the idea of having a plan B. They say, hey, if you have a plan B, you're planning to fail. My view is a little bit different. My view is, if I know what my BATNA is, my plan B, and I'll go around to BATNA in a second, then it gives me a better opportunity to stretch more, because I know if I fall, there's a floor.
Yeah.
And I know what I'm going to do off of that floor. Right? And the whole, it's very similar to negotiating for salary. Negotiating on salary or other negotiating areas. There's this term called BATNA. BATNA is best alternative to a negotiated agreement, right? So if the higher your BATNA, the better your negotiating position is. It's no different in terms of taking actions and moving forward. So if you put yourself in a position where you know, here are my alternatives, and here's how I'm going to go ahead and handle it, but I'm not going to allow my alternatives to get me complacent or lazy, then you're going to have a really high trajectory there.
I think you answered really well my part on that part. You answered completely in the words of saying, like, you can control, but you can also influence what you cannot control.
That's right.
That actually just answered all things in my head, honestly. Because I think that even as a student, like, you think about, in ALPFA too, as in a leadership position, you think about ALPFA, your team, your committee, for those high committees, your events, or you also think about school, your family, managing, actually just growing up and being, what am I going to do in my life? And sometimes you feel you can't control everything, and that can also get very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And the fact that you just said, like, it doesn't matter, like, if you can't control it, you can influence things to not be as tough. Like, you can manage your time better to make things feel easier, or perhaps divide family time, divide your own time. Because I think something that happened with me in my calendar is hard to find me time. Like you were mentioning before, like when you talked about like the whole thing with your paying your back, like that's when you realize, okay, I have to take care of myself. And if you sometimes cut that off because you have so many other things, then that's not gonna get you anywhere, because you can't give what you can't have. What you don't have, sorry. You can't give what you don't have. So definitely that actually answered a lot of things and doubts in my head, even as president at the moment.
Yeah. Can you talk more about imposter syndrome and how it affects students and leaders?
Yeah, and I think it impacts everyone, right? What I will say for myself, I've kind of created this anti-imposter syndrome toolkit for myself. So what is that really? For me, imposter syndrome comes about when one of two things is happening. One is if I feel I don't know something, or I think I don't know it. Either I don't know it or I think I know. The other part is that I feel like I'm not prepared enough for a conversation. And so what I focus on is a couple things. There's certain, in any room I walk into, take a half step back, I on a daily basis will read Wall Street Journal, I read Harvard Business Review, that's not daily, but I will set up, I have Google Alerts set up for various things that I'm focused on. Artificial intelligence, Latino, right, certain words that are out there, so that I know what are the trends and what's happening in the world, and what do I want to make sure I'm able to understand well. What do I know? I know that some of the biggest leaders in the world that are Fortune 500 CEOs, they're reading Wall Street Journal, Financial Times is another one, right? So if I know what they're reading, I know what they're focused on. I know what I care about in that space. I don't have to turn into somebody else for them. I know what I care about in that space too. So I learned very quickly that I can now bring what is of value to a conversation, any conversation based on my background, because I know what they're looking at. I know what they're going through also. Right, so being aware of that. The other piece is the preparation. So when I go to meetings, I like to understand what is the focus, what's the agenda, who's going to be there, what are the goals of this discussion, what impact are they looking to create, where's the momentum that we're trying to create from this conversation, what do we want to do next, and I am ultra prepared. And what I've learned over time is there's nobody, any of us can't walk into a room and have a conversation with. And I'll tell you the moment I remember learning that is I had gone back to business school and Kravis from KKR and I are having a conversation, right? So one of the most brilliant folks out there, does a whole bunch of good stuff. And we're talking about utilities companies. And I remember we probably spoke for about, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. I remember when I got home talking to my wife, I was like, yeah, I was gonna hang with him for 10 minutes, right? I could hang with anybody in this world, right? Like it was like, right? Like it was like all of a sudden, I was like, wait, and she was like, let's be clear. 2 things. 1, don't get too big of a head, right? 2, you've always been able to hang with anyone in this world, right? I'm glad you realize that. And so my point here is it's preparation. So find the things in your industry, what you're focused on. Maybe it's not Wall Street Journal, maybe it's something else, right? Maybe it's Scientific American, maybe it's some other, but understand what's out there, where the trends are. You walk into any conversation, you are going to be able to bring your best self. Here's the other thing, it's not just headlines. If you only read the headlines, people that know can tell you only read the headlines. So you want to go a step deeper than anybody else to make sure you can add some real content to a conversation.
I guess maybe on that end, it's talking about imposter syndrome. I think the way that I struggle the most with it, sometimes it's just trying to bring myself actually in. Like, you know, I want to bring my culture in.
Yeah.
Because that is part of me. So I understand the point of like reading the Wall Street Journal, knowing about the financial sector and finance too.
Yeah.
So I can go and sit down anywhere and just speak about the markets. But then I would like to also put a little twist into it, a little sazon into the thing. So I'm like, how would you recommend doing that? Because I believe you meet up with so many other CEOs who don't look like us.
Yeah.
So how do you bring your authentic self, you know, like that new Puerto Rican, Puerto Rican person that you are into the table? Like, how are you able to sprinkle in your culture into it?
By doing it. And what I mean by that literally is we know where we can bring that stuff into conversations, and sometimes there's a hesitation that goes along with it. Let me not talk about this. No. Like, go into it, right? There was never, so any point in my career, it's always been clear who I am and who I grew up, where I grew up. It's Damien from Harlem. Yep. And I even make it a point, if I'm hearing conversations where someone is saying something that I consider to be a misrepresentation of our community, I insert myself in that conversation. And sometimes it's in a very formal business setting, and sometimes it's at a casual restaurant. I'll give you one example. There were 2 ladies sitting next to myself, someone else. We were having a business meeting. When it was over, I was like, okay, I got it. They had to run to a meeting. I hear them talking about Harlem and how bad it is. So I was like, okay. I was like, sorry, I couldn't help it. I overheard you having the conversation. Just gotta tell you, I grew up there. And here are 3 restaurants that, because they were talking about finding someplace to eat and they did not want to go there.
Oh.
Here's some places that you gotta go to, that you gotta love it, and just having a conversation, right? What did I do? In that moment, they got to firsthand meet somebody from Harlem. If I am now their interpretation of this is what Harlem's about, okay, now they understand what Harlem's really about, right? Here's the other piece. Am I the same person as I was growing up in Harlem? No. I've evolved over time. My mindset, I continue to change, right? I'm not gonna be the same person when I leave this room today, because this conversation is gonna open up additional things for me based on what I'm hearing from you all, right? But what is the same? My values are the same. I still have the same values from Harlem growing up. Let there be no doubt, that is what makes me successful. I used to love it when people would ask me, so here's another, people ask me, can you talk about why it was so difficult growing up in Harlem? I was like, I will answer that after I tell you why I am better in a business meeting than anybody in this entire place. And I would answer that question, and then they would say, then I would ask them, do you still want me to tell you why it was hard growing up in Harlem? And say, no, we understand what you're saying. Thank you. So find the opportunities for you to be able to insert that position and make sure that when you do it, there is no hesitation in how you are bringing that to them, right? That level of confidence, like that will translate to them saying, okay, I understand you, right? So keep bringing that into the conversation, right? One more example, 3.7 trillion in GDP in the Latino community in this country, right? We are a powerhouse here. You want to talk business? Let's talk business.
Yeah.
Right? You want to talk financial literacy? We can talk that. We can talk anything you want to talk. We can bring it to the table, and I'm going to bring myself as part of that. That's what makes me unique. That's what's going to reduce your risk as a company, right? And that's the whole thing around diversity. I'll go into this one last piece, and y'all can decide whether you want to keep this or not in there. My perspective of the reason why diversity translates to improved financial results. Consider this for a second. You know what you know, right? You know a fraction of what you don't know. The biggest thing out there is what you have no idea you don't know. The three of us together, our unknown unknowns is going to shrink, right? What are the things that will ruin a project? The unknown unknowns. You can plan for everything else. You can have your contingency plans, which will improve your chance of finishing, but your unknown unknowns will kill you. Well, if you can reduce your unknown unknowns, what does that mean? Your risk is going down. What are companies focused on? Right, that risk piece, corporations are so focused on it, it's one of the standing committees that they typically have on their, actually that they have to have on their boards, the risk committee. They're focused on the risk that can destroy a company. Diversity removes or drops that risk level. If the risk level goes down, your probability of success goes up. If your success goes up, then you are likely going to get that return on investment that you assumed that you were going to get at the beginning of the project, if not even better. So when you have a diverse room in place, you're going to be successful more likely than not, right? And so that's why it's so important we do what we do and we continue to have that diversity focus. Right? It's not just diversity for diversity's sake or being nice people. No, right? It's because we're amazing, right? We are amazing people, right? And so we are focused on creating great things in society, right? It's like so that's my view on diversity and why it matters from a business perspective as well.
Yeah.
I think just one other thing you were saying about Harlem and how you want to represent it.
Yeah.
I feel the same about El Salvador.
Yeah.
Many people have mixed feelings. We're the smallest country in Central America, and everything. People don't know about us. When I came here to high school, people would tell me like, "Oh, are you Mexican?" I'm like, "I'm not Mexican." Now they give me Mexican, I love the Mexican, but it's not my country.
Yeah.
So it's just like I always have that drive to put that like my country into the people's mind in their map.
Yes.
So I guess when I asked you before, like, how do you not have imposter syndrome and just like put yourself out there, be your culture in. I feel like I kind of have been doing that, but like in a silo. Now that you've said that, I just feel like I could actually just be empowered that even in the workforce.
Yeah.
Like I always see my story, a little elevator preach. Hi, my name's Victoria Ramirez. I come from El Salvador and everything.
Yeah.
People love it all the time, but I feel like sometimes I get tired of it saying it myself, and you shouldn't. I shouldn't get tired of saying it because, as you said, like it is part of me.
Yeah.
What made me, and if somebody believed in me, it's because they also believe like my background. And
Yeah.
as before, people have so many preconceptions of my country, and I feel like I've been there, done that. And I love saying like, hey, like look at this place. I have many of my friends be like, oh, I actually visited just cause, and I love it. So I just, it made me feel better as the fact that it's not only me that wants to like, put my place out there.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. I haven't been to El Salvador.
Your next spot to go. Your next spot to go.
Salvador is beautiful, yes. I mean, we're neighboring countries. We're
Yes.
from Honduras, and
Honduras,
so we have the
nice.
same stigma where it's like, yeah, we're kind of like dangerous, like
Yeah.
El Salvador, we're kind of dangerous, or Mexico, we're kind of dangerous, and we're only, look for, our foods and, our music, but really just immersing yourself in the culture and getting to know
It's
people.
beautiful.
It's
Yes.
beautiful. And just like imagine just going there. Like that's even more beautiful.
If I'm honest, also that talent. So I'm gonna just say this is an idea for sometime later.
Yeah.
But when I first got into ALPFA my freshman year, and I did my interview for the e-board, I was going for UPF events. They asked me, what would you change for ALPFA National? And I was thinking to myself, I'm international. I come from El Salvador, and I was like, why didn't we do ALPFA Global? Why don't we start in high schools from like Latin America? And I know it could be a story for a long term, maybe not your role for anybody, so I'm putting it out there. I started thinking about that, and I was like, they could have recruited me, from high school. type of thing, and it just
Yeah.
teach me about it. Like, if you have the opportunity to come to US or later on, like, just if you plan to like study abroad or find a job up here, like, there's ways around that.
Yeah.
And there's so much talent in America.
Yeah.
Because
Yes,
I've seen it.
for
So
sure.
many of my peers, like, we all study English and Spanish. Like, it's kind of like if you want to go abroad, you have to know English. And aside from like coming in that bilingual aspect, knowing that Spanish technical words in finance, in any other as engineering,
Yes.
like that's some of the things that you need here. Like every
Yeah.
time we go to a company, they're like, oh, interested in Latin American side, because we need people like you that speak Spanish like fluently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's just an idea out there, and just like Alpha Global could be a thing.
I think I won't go into all details, but I will tell you it's the wheels are turning. The wheels are already turning.
So you know what, freshman me was not crazy. Freshman me was not crazy.
Yeah, your dreams will come true.
There's so much for
Yes,
Alpha.
yeah,
10 years
yeah.
later, I'll be like, I knew it.
Well,
Day one,
we're
go
gonna
back
have
to
you as
the-
part of the whole.
I'm
making
trying
it
to say
happen.
to Alpha, after graduating the year, I'm trying to say in Alpha National,
Yeah.
New Jersey, New York, somewhere.
Yes, yeah.
So that's my plan after.
That's what we need. That's what we need.
Yeah, I love that. So I would love to end on that note. I want to thank you guys for your time, of course you, for
Absolutely.
being here and for just telling us all the advice and all your words that are really inspiring and intentional. So I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you
And
for
I'm
having
glad
me.
that you're here at Rutgers Newark, just representing, and I'm really, really happy that you took the time to be here. So yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
so
Thank you
much.
for having me. It was awesome, fantastic. I truly appreciate y'all having me, and hopefully I could come back even for another episode at some point.
Oh my gosh, for sure. I would love for this long
Look up
term. I
Jack,
mean,
part
Stephanie,
two.
this is my committee right
Yeah.
here. Part 2, definitely. I want this to be, this is, my baby, but I want everybody, to get their
Yeah.
hands dirty with the podcast and make sure that future leaders know all about this, even through their phone. Everybody uses their phone. So I'm really happy that we're able to make that impact. But yeah. Stay tuned, guys, for more episodes. Please share and repost, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
I
You need to like, Jack,
I'm sorry, Jack,
Jack, cut this.
Jack,
Did you say Jack?
you can include this if you want, Jack.
That's the bloopers.
Bloopers. This is your host, Selva Garcia, and for those who don't know about Jack, cut that out.